So we're just currently in the quarterfinals, and Rich has been very happy to join us for a few minutes before they go off for the food. Now, Rich, you know, sort of English Magic scene, we've always talked about... Yeah, you just stand in front of the camera, don't worry about us. That's Matt Light, he thinks he owns the place whenever he turns up to anywhere. So, you know, like the British Magic scene, like for years we've been saying, oh, we're going to have the next breakthrough player, and it struggles, doesn't it? Even going all the way back to like Warren Marsh and people like that who we thought would be great, and then Craig Jones. So what does a British Magic player have to do to get on this gravy train? We don't seem to have anyone.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. You look at, you've mentioned Warren Marsh, who a long time ago was second at a Pro Tour. You talk about Craig Jones, who was second at a Pro Tour and has multiple Grand Prix win, Birmingham and so on. And then you move along and you get to the likes of Sam Gomersall and Quentin Martin in the kind of 2005, 2006 era. And of course, I must mention all the sort of the Hampton Court Palace team, your Ben Ronaldsons, your Ollie Schneiders, your Scott Wills, Pete Norris, that brigade, of course Tony Dobson, and so on, and John Ormerod. But more recently, I think there was a dearth around about 2008, 2009, where basically it was just Stuart Wright. Yeah. But since then, really, I think we're actually in pretty reasonable shape. Right now, we have Richard Bland, who, let's not forget, was runner-up at a World Championship only 13 months ago. And we have Dan Royd. So we have two full-time Magic professionals, if you like. You know, they're at every Pro Tour. They're at pretty much every European Grand Prix. I think what is encouraging is that a lot of players are now starting to attend European Grand Prix on a regular basis, not just one a year, but they're going, okay, there are 12 this year. We're going to 5 of them. We're going to 8 of them. We're going to 10 of them. Carrie Oliver's been doing that. You find Jim Corwood, who's playing here today, just missed out on the top 8. He goes to almost all the European GPs. And there is very definitely, Matt Light, again, you've talked to a lot today, they are going regularly and playing regularly with 3 buys. And I think that's partly a function of GPTs, which are really good for the game. And they're learning to play tight against the high level of player.
Now, I know you've played PTQs yourself in other countries.
Sure, yes.
Now, how about this thing? That if you win a PTQ in England or in Britain, like, you've got to go through so many good players. I mean, when you look at a field of Brits, it's so tough to beat 140 other players, where there's not really that many easy games compared to going to America. There seems to be like quite a lot more casual players who turn up to PTQs, and that doesn't seem to be the case over here. There's a lot more hardcore elements to PTQs.
All right, so I think the thing is that in the States, there is a tendency, I mean, let's face it, it's a vast place. So basically, if you are in, pluck a figure from the air, if you live in Kansas City, not that often you're going to have a Grand Prix. You're going to have, you know, they had Nationals a few years back. But basically, you're going to get a PTQ once, maybe twice a year. So if you live, let's say, 100 miles from Kansas City, you are going to go to 2 PTQs that year. And you will go. Here in Britain, we can, if you live in Birmingham, you can basically go to every PTQ with a little bit of effort and planning. So I think, yes, you're absolutely right. There are people going to PTQs for a day out locally in the States. However, I think partly because of the Star City circuit, at the back end of PTQs in America, look, let's not muck around. You have to work incredibly hard to win an American PTQ. And there are lots of mistakes being made in the top 8 of a British PTQ. So I think I certainly wouldn't claim that British PTQs are tougher to win than American PTQs. I don't think that's true at all. But I do agree with you that in terms of the concentration of standard, there are relatively few what you might call day trippers at a British PTQ, because so much is about store play. So if you want to play Magic, you can play, test on a Wednesday for Modern, come into the store on Thursday, do a little sort of 8-man. Friday you do Friday Night Magic. Sunday there's a 6-round Legacy event in your local store that's 2 miles from your house. So the Magic itch can easily be scratched now without having to attend a PTQ. And if you think back to when we started playing in the late 90s, the typical Britain circuit was full of people who would come to Doncaster for their one tournament of the month. They'd bring their own 75 cards. They'd go 1 and 3, go, my deck's terrible. They'd come back with 50 of the same 60 cards the following month, having bought 10 more from the dealer. And then they'd go 1 and 3 again. And at the end of that one, they still didn't know that Prodigal Sorcerer taps at the end of their turn to deal a point of damage. Now, that's just not true anymore. So the overall standard has risen vastly, vastly. And to come back to your first question, which I kind of didn't answer, what do British people need to do to be good? They need to practice. They need to play. Because Magic has become a game where if you work hard and you know the matchups and you have a modicum of talent and a kind of brain that processes magical information well, you will beat most people most of the time. Yes, of course there's luck in the game, whether it's limited or constructed, but fundamentally, hard work does just get results.
So let's talk a little bit about Wizards' policy.
Okay.
Grand Prix in Britain.
Yep.
Why can't we have a constructed Grand Prix?
I've no idea.
How many years has it been now?
Oh, 2008. Birmingham 2008, won by Li Shi-chan, who just made the last Pro Tour top 8 himself in Seattle. So we've had, three limited since then?
And London again, the one coming up, is again limited?
Sure. I mean, I guess partly they look at numbers. I mean, I know that it's all about geographical balance. There is an element, certainly true, that...
But Manchester was such a good Grand Prix. It blew everyone away for attendances.
Oh, totally. Manchester was a phenomenal event. And one of the interesting things there is it was... I would say there were a good 200 lapsed players who came out of the woodwork for that event as a kind of reunion. There was a very active Facebook community for that event where they said, look, you may not have turned a Magic card sideways since 1998, but come to Manchester, you will see people that you remember with affection from that kind of northern circuit. So I think Manchester was a phenomenal event. There are always number imbalances between limited and constructed. It's true for coverage, that people are much more interested in constructed watching because they can take those decks, like this weekend. You're going to have tons of people pouring over the slippery Bogle deck, for example, busy working out what they want to do with that. It's much harder if they're going, it's a Selesnya
certainly
deck.
on the counterpoint so far as limited, I mean, like limited Grand Prix, they are long days. They can be...
Yeah, we have been known that there is no doubt that you basically carve out 3 extra hours on both days pretty much. Limited Grand Prix are a real stamina grind, and one of the interesting things I'm really looking forward to Utrecht, which is the team GP, but potentially that is going to be the biggest GP of all time. You could easily see 800 teams, so 2,400 players. And how to get 2,400 players down to 3 players in the course of 2 days, which feature any number of drafts, builds, and so on, is going to be a logistical challenge. And I'm really interested in seeing how that turns out, because certainly the Two-Headed Giant GP in Amsterdam 2007, that finished at 1:30 on Monday morning. So that's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, obviously...
I mean, I've known you for, going on 10 years now.
Sure.
And I know how much you love team events. They're just so unique, aren't they?
I love the fact that you get the dream teams, that you can... I was lucky enough to cover San Jose, and you had Brad Nelson paired with Jacob Van Lunen and Chris Lackman, the Sliver twins. I love
previous to that, of course, you had Kai Buda's team, which was probably the first sort of Uber team.
Yeah, Phoenix Foundation are just amazing. And team play is great because you have the chance to basically, for a slice of Magic immortality, because if you sit down with your 2 friends and you happen to get paired in round 3 against 3 Dutch Hall of Famers, you get to play Frank Castle, Bram Steenbangers, and Jerome Remy comes out of retirement for a tournament. You're like, well, maybe your deck's going to beat them, and you could beat 2 Hall of Famers. That's fantastic. It's an ultimate fan event for team play. Just tremendous.
What about this old rule that, one team member can sort of, well, pretty much help another team member with the decision and stuff like that during the, like, drafting and other things, and during gameplay? You can talk to your team.
Sure. Well, that doesn't happen with drafting. So drafting, when we look towards like the World Magic Cup, again, coming this summer, there's going to be team play there, and you don't get, you get to build sealed there. But generally speaking, the way we run team events with drafting is you don't get to interact there.
What's with the hand signals? Is that still okay?
No, that is not okay. My understanding is the rules do not allow for that, and there's a lot of judges around at those events going, let's not do that, eh? And obviously for things like Utrecht, they're just going to be vast quantities of judges all over the place to try and make things run smoothly. I like the fact that you can talk about decisions. I don't like, from a coverage point of view, I don't like that rounds tend to go very long, because every time you have a little chat, it does generally take longer than if you don't have a chat.
Especially if you're German and using long words.
They do have quite a lot of syllables in a lot of words. It's like pass in German is a rough translation of pause for a moment and then decide there is nothing you would rather do. It's something like that. Yeah, German's a very literal language in that way. Yeah, it can be like that. But to me, team events are worth the effort occasionally. I wouldn't want to see 10 team GPs a year, but to see one in North America, one in Europe every year, I think that's just wonderful.
Because they certainly did it in the past, where they had like the 3 team members playing different formats, one sort of doing standard, one doing it modern.
Sure.
Do you like that kind of idea where you have the team event, but then you still have to do so much testing of the 3 different formats as well?
Yeah, they're looking towards, again, the World Magic Cup. They learnt a lot from the first one. There was a feeling a lot of teams really wanted to have the full team experience, which if you didn't make the top 32 on day 1, you didn't get. You basically just played individually and added your points together. They're amending that for this year. There is a genuine team altogether element to that, which is nice. So you do get to sit round, and I like that very much. I do like the multiple formats. The thing that has been awkward was the idea of, well, okay, you've got 3 decks, but you had 4 team members last year. So how do you divide the decks, and who isn't going to get to play? Now, that isn't what's happening this year. Yes, you will still have 3 decks, but when you get to there, you can assign who you want of the 4. There will be someone sitting out for those first 3 rounds on day 2, I think it is, and then someone else will sit out for the second set. So I think that's alleviated some of the playtest problems, because yes, you could have someone who tested hundreds of hours on Legacy and then or Modern, and then just didn't.
Or is a bad limited player, and it's like, tell you what, you're not going to play limited.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's all these things are works in progress. When you come up with a new event, and obviously, I mean, by any metric, the World Magic Cup was a phenomenal event. I would argue it was possibly only second to the Players' Championship in terms of awesome. Well,
certainly all the Scottish people liked it.
With good reason. Didn't they do fantastically well? Just brilliant. Can't congratulate them enough.
And of course, what else is ridiculously difficult to do, and that's to get 3 people from Britain or England who were on the same team to actually talk to each other before the event.
Yeah, I mean, it can be difficult, and partly, ironically, although we talked about the geography of the UK being very conducive to going to PTQs, it really isn't that conducive to finding someone from Exeter and someone from London and someone from Norwich getting together regularly to test. Whereas, for example, the duchies are absolutely built on the fact that wherever they live, you drop them at random in that country, they are within 2 hours of each other without fail. And so, of course, they get together and test. And the same with the Belgians.
I mean, historically, the Brits have been really bad at testing for Worlds.
That's partly true. There have been years, though, where players have got together. I certainly remember the year Joe Jackson was team captain. There was plenty of good work done there. And there is an element of just chemistry to the team. I mean, you look at the Americans. The Americans had Brian Kibler locked in as the champion. Then you have LSV. And it's like, okay, is it going to be Sam Black? Sam Black lost in a final.
And Brian was gutted at that.
And I mean, obviously, you want Sam Black because that would be phenomenal. But as it turned out, the two guys who were Alex Binnick and Joe Panacchio were phenomenal, and they carried the team.
So it turns out
there was a genuine connection.
if you beat Sam Black, you're probably quite a good player.
Generally speaking, I mean, for a lot of the last couple of years, if you beat Sam Black, you probably won a Pro Tour, right? I mean, Sam's a ferociously good player, and he, in a way, he doesn't get the credit he deserves because he's not a terribly outgoing personality, and he's not in your face, I'm completely awesome. He just quietly designs the best deck in the building, Pro Tour after Pro Tour. He's phenomenal.
So thinking about these European Grand Prix, isn't one of the main reasons, of course, it's so expensive for Brits to actually go anywhere around Europe.
Sure.
In comparison to Europeans being able to go anywhere else around Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. When we drive for 4 hours, we either go in a circle or we end up in sea. And in Europe, there are French GPs, German GPs, Belgian, Dutch, anywhere in that sort of region. And even if you go as far across as, say, Prague and so on, basically, there's an awful lot of Europe that's within 4 or 5 hours road trip car journey of a GP venue. So yes, it is much easier, but it's all about a little bit of planning, because that's something that the guys like Jim Corwood, Matt Light and so on have been doing. And there are £29 return flights to these things if you decide more than 3 days before that you want to go. Like, these GPs have been announced for a long time, like Verona in Utrecht are still nearly 3 months away, 2.5 months away, whatever. And certainly the back end of the year, if you want to go to Warsaw or Prague's the last weekend of August, something like that. There are flights out there for these things, and you just have to decide, yes, I want a holiday. I want Magic to be part of my holiday. Prague's an amazing city. Warsaw's an amazing city. Vienna's gorgeous. That's right at the back end of the year. And you just have to decide that, in a sense, the Magic is incidental, because, let's face it, we've got the semi-finals just about to start, and there are only 4 people who can still get to the Pro Tour, and 140 who've gone home knowing that they can't. So you can't go to these events thinking that you're going to win. You have to go to these events going, I'm on holiday, I'm with friends, I'm having a great time, and part of the great time is playing fun Magic.
So let's talk about you then.
Okay.
What's your next 12 months?
Very, very busy. All the European Grand Prix. I'm running the...
All?
Yeah, I'll be at all 12. May only be at 11, but I think technically I'm at 12. I run the European video coverage, so I'm kind of responsible for the talent that we put on camera. People like Matej Zatlkai, Tim Willoughby, Frank Karsten, Simon Gertzen, Moraine Liebert. That's my kind of core team at the moment. And basically responsible for the content that goes into those shows. So we've got a lot of exciting plans for that over the coming 12 months. All the Pro Tours, World Magic Cup, Players Championship, that kind of thing. Probably some incidental fun and frolics, maybe Community Cup, maybe the Mox Championship, things like that. Generally, I end up doing somewhere between 20 and 25 major events a year. I go to the States and do sort of bookend Grand Prix, so I'll fly out, do a Grand Prix, maybe then go to a Pro Tour. So like Portland goes straight into San Diego this year, so I'll do those two, and then do an event on the way back kind of thing. So you do a sort of triple header, sandwich it in. So yeah, somewhere 20 to 25 events, couple of projects that hopefully are going to come to fruition in 2013. My wife is trying to persuade me that I need to write another book, which this time, rather than being about a player, I discovered at the back end of last year that when I come back from Pro Tour Montreal, that the following event will be my 100th major Magic event as covering. So a century of Magic, basically looking back at the 100 events and kind of what I've learned about Pro Magic and Magic at a high level, and some fun stories as well. So I think I'm probably going to be doing that, sitting in airport lounges over the next few months. So it's going to be a very exciting time. The thing I'm most excited about, and I don't even know whether I'm going to be there, but the single event I'm most excited about is the Modern Masters Grand Prix in Las Vegas. I think that weekend is going to be staggering, and I think that there are people who 10 to 15 years from now will say, I played in the Modern Masters GP in Vegas. I think it's going to be utterly astonishing. And if you're going to one GP somewhere in the world that isn't your local GP, that's just going to be ridiculous.
The idea of being able to draft these deck archetypes that you've never been able to do before.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's a guy who doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, and he already gets a lot of credit. It's a guy called Eric Lauer, who is inside R&D at Wizards in Seattle, and he is a deck designer from long ago, Team CMU, Carnegie Mellon University, very close friends with Randy Buehler, brilliant deck designer. But one of the things that Eric has done over the last few years is he's really taken Limited by the horns and ensured that sets like Innistrad, which is like one of the most popular draft formats of all time, he's kind of responsible for all the variety that's in there. It's not that he's just making the cards. He's ensuring that draft is this epic experience. He is responsible for Modern Masters. And we actually had Gavin Verhey from R&D visiting the UK over Christmas and New Year, and he came to Chimera in Nottingham a couple of nights back. And he was just saying that with Modern Masters, for the first time ever that R&D can remember, when the product first arrived, the actual product, they just did one or two extra drafts just to be sure. No, it is a bonkers set.
I mean, draft has come such a long way. If you think back to when people were drafting like Tempest and Stronghold, and they were just so awful. The sets were never designed for drafting. And then it moved into finally going, hey guys, let's think about Limited. And now, so this is like the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a sort of inevitability to that, which is Magic Online. Let's be honest, why would you design for draft when the only people drafting are the people who have gone 1 and 3 at their one event of the month in 1998, right? You know, there is just no compulsion to provide that. The Limited environment meant tournament packs for pre-releases. And again, that's one day a year. So that just drafts didn't happen. Let's remember that Japan, largely, part of their absence of success at the Pro Tour during their first few years of sending people there was that there was no culture of drafting in Japan. Whereas in America, that whole idea of draft, just by the name of it, because of fantasy football,
and it turned into
sports,
money draft.
I don't know what that is. Never heard of it. Team draft, I've often seen people play 3-on-3. That occurs quite a lot. Yeah, there's no doubt that draft is just such a huge thing, and because so many people are playing, you have to make the environment diverse. You can't do it so that you draft 6 times and you go, yep, that's that format dealt with. You need to draft 50 times, 70 times to feel like you really understand. Certainly for RTR, that's my experience. You start to get a handle on it because, you know, you're green-white, sure, but are you Green-White Axebane Guardian getting up to Horncaller's Chant and Risen Guardians? Are you Green-White populating 3/3s? Or are you Green-White Brush Strider and Pump? There's 3 Green-White decks. And there are all places where they intersect. And, you know, it's like there's just so much to learn. And the Limited environments are really, really deep right now. And that's great for the game.
It's been a really good chat, and I think, you know, we certainly learnt a lot. So finally, some guy goes, he looks interesting, how can I stay in contact with him? So Facebook?
So I'm Richard Hagon at Facebook with Stunning Originality, and on Twitter I am MTG Rich. I don't tweet that often, and I basically only tweet about Magic, but we have some fun times. I've started streaming tentatively, so people can see how terrible I am at the game. Yeah, by all means, follow me, and come say hi at events, because that's why I come to PTQs. I like to meet people and see what's going on in the UK scene and around the world. So see you at an event soon.